on this edition of The Fifth Estate.
Well, there are no gay men in sport because gay men can't play sport.
It's one of hockey's best-kept secrets.
It's certainly one of the last places where it's a challenge, I think, to be openly gay.
I've known 2 NHL players that actually were gay, which obviously I'm not going to say their name. There's Brendan.
Tonight, an inspiring young man.
Go, Red Hawks, go!
All Brendan wanted to do was start a conversation. He wanted people to talk about homosexuality in hockey.
Then, what no one could have expected.
Where are you? What's wrong? Call us.
And a father picks up where his son left off.
I'll do the best I can.
Hello, I'm Bob McEwen. Welcome to The Fifth Estate. It's a compelling question. How is it that here in the second decade of the 21st century, a time of gay marriage and gay adoption, in the 4 major sports in North America, there has never been a single active player who's ever been openly gay? If demographic patterns apply to sports as to the population in general, over the past several years, for example, there should have been as many as hundreds. So why is it in sports history only a handful of former pros have ever come forward to say they're gay, and that was after their careers, not during? In the National Hockey League, not a single NHL player, active or retired, past or present, has ever come out. It's what makes the story of Brendan Burke so extraordinary.
Brendan was really mature and outgoing from day one.
He just had this way with people where he connected immediately.
And he just made you want to be a part of everything that he was doing because he made it look like so much fun.
And he really liked to see people happy.
Brendan was born in Vancouver, 3rd of the 4 children of Carrie and Brian Burke. He was then a senior executive with the NHL's Canucks. Hockey, the family business. Brendan's older brother, Patrick.
When your father's either the vice president of the league or GM of a team, your life in some way always revolves around hockey. Your family trips are planned around hockey. You spend weekend nights, you go to a hockey game.
So I'm not kissing anyone's behind to play here. That's just not going to happen. He wants out, I'm going to move him.
Brian Burke was already on his way to becoming one of the icons of the National Hockey League.
We want them to play at this pitch of intensity and adrenaline and ferocity and fearlessness.
Then as now, gruff, opinionated, principal of the old school.
You know, we require as a team proper levels of pugnacity, testosterone, truculence, and belligerence. That's how our teams play.
And from the beginning, like his dad, Brendan also was a force to be reckoned with, albeit less gruff, more gentle, his older sister Katie.
Brendan was full of life from the day he was born, and people always wanted to be around him. And even from a really young age, he was a handsome kid and just tons of personality, and he just talked to literally anyone. And so in church, you know, it was always an adventure going somewhere with Brendan because he'd talk to anybody and anyone about anything.
In the mid-90s, the Burke's marriage broke up. Carrie and the kids settled outside Boston. It was about the same time, out of the blue, that she had an epiphany about her younger son.
I came across a picture from his 3rd grade birthday party with all of his friends, and I remember that day thinking that I think he's gay. And I don't know why exactly it came to me. All I know was I never, he was my 3rd child with Katie and Patrick. It hadn't occurred to me, and with Brendan it did.
Carrie would keep that feeling to herself for years. In his early teens, Brendan took up hockey. But it and life were about to get more difficult when he reached high school. That was here at Zavarian Brothers, an all-boys school in suburban Boston. By his final year of high school, Brendan Burke was one of the best-known, best-liked people on campus here in Westwood, Massachusetts. Despite his late start at hockey, he had finally made the varsity team. But by then, he also knew there was something else in his life that he'd been keeping to himself, something he was going to have to sort out. His brother Patrick didn't know it then, but when Brendan quit the school hockey team, it wasn't because of an argument with the coach, as he'd claimed.
he played, and then his senior year, he was dealing with his homosexuality. And one of the things that was hard on him, as much as he loved his teammates and the coaches were great, was hearing homophobic slurs in the locker room. And that kind of wore on him a little bit, and he left the team his senior year.
What Brendan was wrestling with is not only an issue in high school hockey, because homophobic taunts are the insult of choice throughout the sport, all the way to the National Hockey League.
And it's Brad May and Georges Laraque.
Georges Laraque is the NHL's recently retired heavyweight champion.
When you play against people in hockey, because you're allowed to fight, and some of the stuff that you could do, the way that you call people names and stuff, and you always call to try to get somebody a rise out of someone, you'll call them gay and all that type of stuff, right, to get people mad.
And Avery gives DiPietro a little shower, and that's what Wisniewski took exception to.
An ugly example this season. James Wisniewski of the New York Islanders suspended for this obscene gesture against the Rangers, simulating oral sex.
Like, it's crazy because in the society today, like, a lot of people use that as an insult and actually gets people mad. So that shows you how far we are to still accepting that.
As he graduated from high school, Brendan Burke had no idea what lay ahead. A remarkable journey, but so little time. When we return, what Brendan tells his dad. And the biggest star who's ever come out.
Scores the try. Gareth Thomas for the corner. Gareth Thomas gets there, and that's the one he's been waiting for. That is the one which breaks Ian Evans' try-scoring record for Wales.
In Wales, everyone knows his name. Gareth Thomas is one of the most famous players in the history of rugby. A year ago, he was also secretly gay, and like young Brendan Burke, grappling with what to do about it.
You know, when you lie, you live in fear, and it sometimes makes you not a very nice person. But you know, when I live like I do now, which is without lie, then I'm free to express myself. I'm free to express myself off the field and on the field.
It's important to understand Gareth Thomas's reputation in the world of rugby. He's been called a rugby icon. Captain of the national side in Wales, where the sport is like a religion. Captain of the Lions, the British national team. And playing at the highest level over a decade and a half, he's been respected by teammates and opponents alike. It's why British fans were so shocked by his announcement, according to sports journalist Martin Sadler.
He was regarded as a real tough guy, you know, who could handle himself on the field in any situation. He never shirked anything.
For Canadians, imagine Mark Messier or Gordie Howe suddenly revealing he's homosexual. When Gareth Thomas told his story, it was compounded by the fact that he'd been married for almost a decade. Thomas says living his lie caused such stress that he drank to excess and contemplated suicide.
You know, sport is a passion, it's a love, it kind of creates who you are as a person and something you don't want to give up. So people, you know, tend to hide their sexuality and keep their sport rather than open their sexuality and ultimately feel like they may lose their sport, which is their love.
Only one other British sports star had ever come out before, soccer player Justin Fashanu, a decade and a half earlier.
Fashanu.
Fearful of being outed, Fashanu sold his story to a tabloid newspaper. It would be the beginning of the end.
He got a lot of hate mail, he got a lot of abuse in you know, a whole range of different ways.
And then the abuse turned tragic.
Justin's form as a football player declined markedly after he came out. And he ultimately suffered a very sad death where he committed suicide.
He hanged himself?
So, yeah, he suffered from depression and ultimately killed himself. Now that, you know, that example, I would suggest to you, is probably the biggest reason why nobody else has followed in his footsteps.
It's the example of Justin Fashanu that Gareth Thomas wants to eliminate.
How much of it was thinking you are in a position now, being who you are in the sport in Britain, to make a statement, to be a symbol?
People stereotype gay men as to be a hairdresser. So, you know, they filter them out from sport because you get pushed away. But I think, I feel or I believe from what I've done, and hopefully, you know, hopefully all over the world, I'd love to think, then I've kind of broke down the barriers, and people can feel as kid, well, you know, I'm a gay guy, but I love sport and I can still play sport because it's been proven. You know, it's no longer the black hole that it used to be.
When the time came for Brendan Burke to go to college, the family business kicked in again. He chose Miami University in Ohio, home to one of the top U.S. college hockey programs. Brendan signed up, not as a player, but a student manager. Toronto native Rico Blasi is Miami's head coach.
So he did a little bit of everything. He was really kind of at the coach's disposal, and you know, he was really an astute. He had an astute eye to the game, and I think that came from just being around Brian and his family.
But still, Brendan kept his secret, not only from his family, but also from the team. Patrick Burke says the problem is the same at almost every level of hockey.
It's a very close-knit group of guys who spend so much time together, and one of the ways they bond is by making fun of each other. And unfortunately, one of the most common ways to do that is the use of homophobic slurs.
Patrick is a law student and Philadelphia Flyers scout. He believes the answer to hockey homophobia could be just a few openly gay players.
Many players have expressed problems with homosexuality generally and in the abstract. And if you were to ask a lot of players, you know, would you like to have a gay teammate? Many of them would probably say no. But that's not what's at issue. The issue is this guy sitting next to you, who you've gone to war with, for lack of a better term. You play 82 games with every year. Your buddy's on the road. You go out and have beers together. He blocks shots. He does this. He does that. He happens to be gay. Do you still want him as a teammate? And when players have been confronted with that instead of the abstract, do you want a gay teammate, most of them have responded positively.
I grew up in a town that was all about hockey. My dad played professionally, so I can't remember a time when I couldn't skate.
This man knows all about the fear of how teammates might respond. When he had this conversation, recorded for a book about closeted gay athletes, he'd played in the National Hockey League for several seasons and won a Stanley Cup. If you're a fan, you might well recognize his name. We'll call him Aaron Barnes. An actor speaks his words. He says he's never stopped protecting his secret, especially after he turned pro.
You know, hockey players have this sort of look to them. It just screams, I'm a hockey player. So when I go to the bars, I dress like a professional and tell them I work with computers. But on the few occasions when I've seen another professional hockey player at a bar, it's like, holy shit. You can spot them from a mile away, and it's just like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I've probably bumped into about a dozen players in the gay bars over the years. Once I ran into another player from my own team. I was absolutely terrified. He asked me, what are you doing here? Just checking the place out, I said. He said, me too. We never talked about it again.
For players like Aaron Barnes, hiding who they are is just another price to pay for playing the game.
I think about coming out to my team all the time. I wake up and say, today's the day, but then it's not. I want to, but I don't know. I'm just so used to being the way I am.
But after his first year at university, Brendan Burke was desperate to start telling his secret. He was 19, back home for the summer, when he made up his mind to confide in his two closest friends, Hannah Susek and Mike Creswick.
He had a secret, and, you know, he needed to get it off his chest.
We had just been hanging out, and the room had kind of cleared out. It was just the three of us. and we were talking, and I don't even really remember what we were talking about. And all of a sudden, he just said it.
Yeah.
He was like, guys, I'm gay.
This is the picture they took that night. For Brendan, it would be the beginning of a whole new life. But first, there were others he had to tell. He decided to break the news to his family that Christmas. First, his sisters, then his mom. Actually, he didn't need to say it to her.
And he said, Mom, I think I'm gay. No, Mom, I'm gay. And he started crying a little bit, and I started crying a little bit. And I said, Brendan, I've been waiting for you to tell me this, because I had had an inkling for years. But I felt as though I couldn't approach him, because if he weren't gay, what kind of position would that put him in? And so I was waiting for him to come to me.
The next day, Brendan told his brother Patrick as they were unpacking the car.
So I said, if you want to have this conversation, we can have this conversation. But like, are you joking? Or he said, I swear on the Stanley Cup, I'm completely serious, I'm gay. I said, okay, great. I gave him a hug. I said, all right, you take that bag, I'll take this one. We went inside, and much to my mother's annoyance, I walked in the door and I yelled, Mom, you owe me 20 bucks. I always told you he was gay. And that's how Brendan knew that I was okay with it, because I could joke about it.
That still left the hardest for last, his father. Brendan planned to do it at the family condo in Vancouver during their holiday visit.
There's Brendan. Go, Redhawks, go!
Brian Burke's public image may be gruff and old school, but with a video camera in hand and his kids in the kitchen, he sounds anything but.
Now we're on camera.
Especially when teasing his now 6'4" younger son.
Who stretched the floor last night? Brendan.
Brendan wrecked the floor last night. A little too much wine.
But when the time came to tell his dad, Brendan was nervous. His younger sister Molly was there too, holding his hand for moral support.
And we just sat there and we're like, okay. And they just said, okay, we love you. This won't change a thing at all. And before I went up to bed that night, I sent my mom an email, and I've never been more proud of someone, and I just was so lucky to be there. It was so inspiring, and he just showed so much courage, and it was beautiful. Like, I was always proud of him, and it just made me so proud at how strong he was.
It would take some time, but back in Ohio at Miami University, there was still one more group to tell. Hockey coach Rico Blasi.
I remember him meeting with me at Starbucks and being very nervous, and I said, Brendan, what's wrong? I'm thinking something wrong with class, or some kind of illness or something like that. And honestly, when he told me he was gay, I think I started laughing, because I was expecting something tragic for him to say to me, and that just didn't bother me at all. It's Brendan. I really didn't care if he was gay or if he was black or green or orange. He was part of our family, and whatever we needed to do to support him or to help him, we were going to do.
Miami player Justin Vive had grown up in a hockey family too. The son of former Maple Leaf captain Rick Vive. He wears his dad's number 22. He says the only change was that the team began to rethink the careless use of gay taunts and insults.
Because when you personally know somebody like that, then it definitely, you do see the meaning behind it and the pain that it can cause. And by just saying it, whether you mean it or not, I mean, you're saying it. So I think it was definitely something that we became aware of, but nobody really had the feelings to back up the words that were said.
After the break, Brendan Burke sets his sights on the NHL.
Hockey's a tough one, because it is this ultimate, almost caveman world of tough guys, and it's certainly one of the last places where it's a challenge, I think, to be openly gay.
I know for a fact, I mean, I'm not going to out anybody here today, but I know for a fact there's many gay hockey players, and that the teams that they play on know they're gay. I would have never guessed when I was 14 years old that 26 years later, the government of France would invite me, Mark Tewksbury, the little goof from Calgary, to speak in front of the United Nations about issues of homosexuality.
For more than 20 years, Mark Tewksbury has been one of Canada's leading motivational speakers, enlightening and inspiring others. He now admits that for a decade or so of that time, his life was based in part on a lie.
If I think of my own life, when I was not out, when I was a closeted person, you live a fear-based life, so you're really afraid of losing everything. You're losing your livelihood, your friends, your profession, your income.
Tewksbury, it's going to go to the wall, and on the wall, there it is! He's done it!
Even as one of the world's top swimmers, an Olympic champion, he was afraid to admit he was gay. That changed in 1998 when Mark Tewksbury made the decision to come out. He's since counseled many professional athletes, also conflicted about whether to be openly gay.
And I know for a fact, I mean, I'm not going to out anybody here today, but I know for a fact there's many gay hockey players. And that the teams that they play on know they're gay. But everyone keeps it under the radar, and I don't understand it.
In particular, Tewksbury recalls one well-known NHLer who had finally decided to go public.
I mean, we were there. It was going to be the next day, the press conference was going to happen. Pretty high-profile hockey player was going to come out. That afternoon, backed out. Just decided couldn't do it. The fear overtook him, and we were right back at square zero. So disappointing, but I mean, I know that journey, right? You can't force somebody to do it.
It's why, for someone like Brendan Burke, there was no role model whatsoever. But Miami hockey coach Rico Blasi has no doubt Brendan already had figured out what to do about that.
I think he had a plan, and if you know the Burke family, they always have a plan.
Brendan Burke's coming out had been a big step for him and for his family, but he wanted it to be more than that, which brought him back to where that new stage of his life had begun, his high school, Xaverian Brothers, here in Westwood, Massachusetts. Brendan got permission to address the students at his old school.
High school boys do not deal well with homosexuality, and I know because 8 years before I was sitting in those seats getting a similar speech and cracking gay jokes. And he went back in and was amazing. Stood up in front of all these kids and just said in his own very friendly, somewhat quiet, likable way, like, this is what my life is like, this is what it was like, and this is what it's like for the kid who's sitting next to you right now.
They've been few and far between, but over the years there has been a small number of prominent athletes who've been known to be gay, but always in individual sports, like Canadian world-class figure skaters Toller Cranston and Brian Orser, or tennis stars Billie Jean King and Martina Navratilova. But know it or not, there's now also a member of the Hockey Hall of Fame.
And if there's overtime,
Angela James was once the best female hockey player in the world.
Angela James, inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in the Players category.
Now she's not only one of the first 2 women in the Hall of Fame, but also the first member to be openly gay. Mark Tewksbury believes the pressures on women are different, perhaps, but no less than for male athletes.
I find it so interesting. It's a problem that has 2 sides. So for gays, for gay men, well, there are no gay men in sport because gay men can't play sport. But for women, it's don't you dare come out because you perpetuate a stereotype that all women in sport are gay. So it's really the opposite end of the spectrum, but the same problem. It creates this culture of silence.
A former NBA player who has revealed in his new book, Man in the Middle, that he was gay playing in the NBA. Please welcome to the program, John Amaechi.
A 5-year NBA veteran, John Amaechi is the only professional basketball player who's ever acknowledged he's gay.
And you played in Utah. You played for the Utah Jazz.
Yes, an interesting experience that was.
A gay black man. Just in Utah in general.
I fit right in. But, you know, players in the league, they would be like, oh, you know, the reason that my gay friends would be in the family room, it was, he's English, he's quirky.
Today, Amici runs a high-performance training center in Manchester, England. He said playing basketball in the conservative state of Utah did not encourage candor about his sexual orientation.
I played for a Utah Jazz team where the owner made great efforts one day, running into the locker room, announcing to a locker room that contained only 3 or 4 players, one of them was me, that he wasn't going to let Brokeback Mountain, a film that he called That Fag Movie, play in any of his cinemas. Now, that is a not so very subtle announcement to a team of their position on LGBT issues. And it certainly makes you think twice if you're the gay person in that locker room before coming out.
And when he did come out, after his playing days, it provoked this infamous reaction from former NBA star Tim Hardaway.
You know, I hate gay people, so I let it be known. I don't like gay people. I don't like to be around gay people. I don't, you know, I'm homophobic. I don't like it. It shouldn't be in the world for that or in the United States for it. So yeah, I don't like it.
But Amici maintains the real problem isn't teammates or even opposing players.
There isn't a team in professional sports right now that is equipped or wants to deal with the issues surrounding a player coming out on their team. There are teams, I can tell you for a fact, who know players who are out within the context of that club, but do not want to deal with that player coming out, having every microphone being posted in everybody's face, and have everybody having to say the right thing at the right time. No team wants to deal with that.
And John Amici says any concern about gay players sharing a locker room and showers with straight teammates is simply a bogus issue.
What you have to understand is that the locker room is the workplace. It is one of the workplaces, just like the floor or the field is one of the workplaces. So I am no more aroused in a locker room than most people are sitting in their cubicles in front of their PCs. It's just not, it's not an environment for sex.
They are the same issues that Brendan Burke was determined to confront in hockey.
All Brendan wanted to do was start a conversation. He wanted people to talk about homosexuality in hockey. And he said, if I can be an example for that, then people are going to have to talk about it. You know, even if it's something they're not totally comfortable with, it's something they're going to turn to their friends and say, did you see that Brian Burke's son is gay?
His story was now an irresistible force. TSN would break it in Canada. TSN's hockey host is James Duthie.
It's rare that we get to do important subjects, where the importance goes beyond the rink. And we knew right away that this was one of those subjects and a chance to do something important. And that's why we felt it was a story that was worthy of being on our show.
Brian Burke, the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, is with us. We're going to give you a one-night reprieve about talking about your hockey team, because also with us tonight is Brendan Burke, Brian's son, who joins us live from Boston.
It was a singular moment, a subject that's an unspoken secret in hockey, pulled into the spotlight not by a player or a coach, but by a brave young man barely into his 20s.
Brendan's a former hockey player. He's currently a student manager with the Miami University hockey team, the #1 ranked team in the NCAA. 2 years ago, Brendan went to his family and told them for the first time that he is gay.
He had kept it hidden for much of his life. Now, he was telling the world.
Why did you decide to take this public?
I think it's important because I've been supported so strongly by my family and by Miami's hockey team. And I think it's important that my story is told to people, because there are a lot of gay athletes out there and gay people working in pro sports that deserve to know that there are safe environments where people are supportive of you regardless of your sexual orientation.
He was unbelievable. I kept saying to myself, if this is his cause in life, if he is to be the pioneer and the first person in hockey to be openly gay, even if he's not a prominent player or in a prominent position yet, they could not have chosen a perfect person for that role. Because if anybody has stereotypes, he broke them all down.
And speaking of breaking stereotypes,
Okay, so Brian, whether it's Brendan or somebody else a couple of years earlier than that, is professional hockey ready for an openly gay, whatever it be, scout, executive, manager, player?
Well, the Toronto Maple Leafs are.
I can't speak for other teams, but I would have to guess there are other teams that share my view of this, which is I judge people on their talent and the merit that they bring to the position, not their lifestyle, not their choices, and they're certainly welcome in our organization, and I have to guess that we're not alone.
And Brian has this outward image of being this tough guy, pulls his tie down, unbuttons his shirt, talks about pugilance and truculence and how he loves rough, tough hockey players. But I think it's pretty shallow if people think that's who he is. He's an incredibly intelligent man with a pretty big heart and also a very sensitive side. So I wasn't surprised in any way of his reaction to this.
Here's Brendan playing with Marin.
When we come back, from the heights to the depths.
Within seconds, Patrick called me. And I'm yelling, Patrick, what's going on? What happened?
And a father keeps his promise.
I've been dreading this night. Not because of the company, but because to have to be able to speak on this topic. So I'll do the best I can. We got a new we.
After his coming out on national TV, the Burke family breathed a collective sigh of relief. Nothing bad had happened to Brendan.
It's a good thing the Burkes are not competitive.
His brother, Patrick.
We were worried going in that it might close some doors, and I think it turned out that he became a little more well-known. So he was almost certainly going to law school, and then from there was going to consider hockey or politics. I think that doing this and standing up for what he believes in really gave him a great deal of respect in both the hockey and political communities.
Brendan Burke may have kick-started the conversation, but in a hidebound sport like hockey, will anything change? There have been studies done to measure acceptance of homosexuality in pro sports. In 2006, Sports Illustrated magazine found the NHL to be the most open-minded league, with 80% of the players polled saying they would welcome a gay teammate. Yet half a decade later, there still hasn't been one.
I've known 2 NHL players that actually were gay, which obviously I'm not going to say their names.
Veteran NHLer Georges Laraque wonders why there's so much emphasis placed on someone being the first to go public.
Because if somebody comes out, let's say in a professional sport, like you say, and say, well, okay, I'm gay, and most people will accept it, a couple of people will say something, it's not going to make other people in professional sport want it to do the same, because why? Why do we want so much people to come out of it and to do that? Because it shouldn't matter, you know? You understand what I'm saying?
No, it shouldn't matter, but clearly it does.
But why?
Well, I don't know why, and that's why we're asking the question. But it's clear that it does, because no one has taken that step of saying, I am.
But why we need them to take that step? That's my question.
Which brings us back to the Welsh rugby star, Gareth Thomas. After years leading his own double life, binging on anonymous gay sex while pretending to be happily married, he says coming out has been a revelation.
You know, people say to me they thought maybe my performances would change, and I kind of put it into easy terms as, you know, I feel like I can run faster because I've no longer got a 10-stone pack carrying around me. I can jump higher because I've got no weight on my shoulders. It's a liberating feeling that you take into your life, and like I said, sport is my life. So my life is better for me being truthful to myself, and my sport is better for me being truthful to myself.
Mark Tewksbury knows firsthand how difficult it may be to find the Gareth Thomas of hockey.
I've, of course, watched the Brendan Burke, Brian Burke story unfold, and I always thought it would take a brave player, but I realize it takes a brave administration. I think it's going to take the right general manager, the right coaches that create that environment where everybody on a team feels like they can be who they are, regardless of what that is. But in order for that marquee player to come out, they've got to have a general manager like a Brian Burke that will make sure that they're protected and nothing will happen to them. So I think those two sides need to work together.
It was February the 5th, 2010. In Ohio, Brendan Burke's hockey team had a home game, but someone was missing. Miami team captain Carter Camper.
We all realized that Brendan wasn't there, and I remember before the game, I walked into the coach's room and just kind of overheard them saying, yeah, we called Brendan and he didn't answer, and that's just so unlikely of him.
Head coach Rico Blasi.
When he wasn't there at 5:30, we started to worry. When he didn't show up for warm-up, we were really concerned. There was probably, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 messages from different staff members on his phone. Where are you? What's wrong? Call us. Call somebody.
It was after the second period, still no Brendan, that one of the players' parents approached the coach outside the dressing room. It was Rick Vive, father of Brendan's pal Justin.
And he said to me, can I talk to you? And I'm thinking, why would you want to talk to me during a game? It's unheard of to talk to the coach during a game. And he looked at me and he had tears in his eyes and he said, Burke, he's dead. And within seconds, Patrick called me. And I'm yelling, Patrick, what's going on? What happened? And he's like, you got to call my dad. And I said, what happened? He said, Brendan was in an accident, he died. And I mean, at that point, it was shock. I don't even remember saying a word.
In the middle of a snowstorm, the SUV carrying Brendan and his friend Mark Reedy had gone out of control on an icy highway. Both died at the scene. Brendan's best friends, Hannah and Mike, were back in Boston.
My mom called me and told me. I went and picked her up at work and told her.
And he said that Brendan had died. And I didn't believe it. And I called my house, and the minute I got my father on the phone, I knew. And we're sitting in the back seat together, and we're just like looking at each other like this can't be happening.
At the rink in Ohio, the Miami hockey players got the news after their game.
I said, guys, I can't, I got to tell you something. And I said, the reason why Brendan's not here is because he died this afternoon in a car crash. And at that point, we locked the doors to the locker room. And we just sat there.
Brendan Burke was buried in his hometown of Canton, Massachusetts. His Miami teammates all were there, as were his father's Toronto Maple Leafs and hundreds of others from inside hockey and out. For his parents, the grief must have seemed endless. It would be a long time before Brendan's mother, Carrie, could speak again about her son. She remembers the last day they spent together, a shopping trip at the end of his Christmas vacation.
He came in and met me at my office, and we went down to Brooks Brothers, and we went in there and we got him a couple of shirts and ties that he loved. And he said, you know what, Mom, this is the way I'm gonna dress when I grow up. And I said, that's great. And then we went out to one of the nice steak restaurants in Boston, sat in the window with all the Christmas lights and everything, and just had a great talk and had a great evening.
Here's Brendan playing with Marin.
In a way, the Burkes say, Brendan's death has brought the family even closer together. All now share his dream of making sport a place where everyone can be open about their sexual orientation. Brian Burke had promised his son he would participate in Toronto's Gay Pride Parade. He did. It is the weekend of Canadian Thanksgiving, more than 8 months since Brendan Burke died. And in New York City, there's an event that recognizes the legacy of his young life. The evening is sponsored by the NHL and the 3 other major sports leagues. The guest of honor is Brian Burke, to be given an award by the parents and families of lesbians and gays for carrying on his son's work.
We thank you for what you're doing.
and we'll listen to you say a few words.
New York is the first time since that awful night in February that he'll try to speak publicly about his son.
Well, the first thing I'm going to warn everyone here is that I'm a better speaker than you're probably going to see tonight. I've been dreading this night, not because of the company, but because to have to be able to speak on this topic. So I'll do the best I can. We're with you. Thank you.
It's uncharted territory for a man seldom at a loss for words. He hasn't spoken publicly about it again since.
In my mind, the hero here was Brendan. What Brendan did was it took courage, to come out. We still haven't had a professional athlete come out. We know we have gay athletes, but no one's had the courage to take that step. Had a rugby player in Wales come out. We've had some individual team athletes, some retired team athletes, but we still haven't opened that last door. We haven't broken down that last wall. So for Brendan to come out in the hockey world and say I'm gay, I think it took a great deal of courage. I don't think my role in this was noteworthy at all.
It's the father following in the son's footsteps, Brian Burke, still helping Brendan to spread the word.
I used to marvel at Brendan, how he wanted everyone to be happy, how he wanted everything to work for everyone around him. It was so important to him. And he just was a great kid. And he would have been a kid that we would have been talking about and praising his accomplishments for many, many years. So on behalf of the Burke family and these kids that I'm so proud of, thank you.
One final note, not only did Brian Burke march in the Gay Pride Parade in Toronto, but Brent Sopel of the Chicago Blackhawks carried the Stanley Cup in Chicago's Gay Pride Parade as a tribute to Brendan Burke and his cause. We'll be right back. Welcome back. For every story we do here on The Fifth Estate, you can find out a lot more about it on our website. Just go to cbc.ca/fifth. Next week on The Fifth Estate, 3 remarkable stories of people who went missing and were presumed dead. Here's Lyndon McIntyre with a preview.
It was supposed to be a romantic celebration at a luxury resort. Mark and Robin Comey seemed to have a solid marriage, a happy, blended family. A trip to Mexico in 2008 was a birthday gift for Robin. Relaxation in the sun, intimate dinners, late-night swims, a plan to spend a private moment on a nearby beach.
I had put all of our stuff on a lounge chair, and I called out for him, and he wasn't there.
Mark Comey had disappeared. Was it an accident or a calculated flight from the pressures of reality?
I think if he is alive, he's assumed a new identity, far enough away from Alberta that he'll never be seen or recognized again.
No, not the man I knew, not the man I married, not the father of the children, not my business partner. No.
Lives paralyzed by mystery. Next week on The Fifth Estate, presumed dead.
And that's our program for this week. I'm Bob McEwen. For everyone here at The Fifth Estate, thank you for watching. We'll see you soon.